2008, the Los Angeles Water Department dumped shade balls into a drinking water reservoir. The press reported that this was to save 300 million gallons of water a year, which otherwise would be lost to evaporation. But the true reason of the balls is to prevent sunlight from reaching the water's surface and reacting with the chlorine-treated water, therefore preventing the possible creation of the carcinogen bromate. The slowing of water evaporation was just a side benefit. The shade balls, also known as bird balls, were developed initially to prevent birds from landing on toxic tailing ponds produced by the mining industry. They've been also used by airports to prevent birds from being attracted to drainage ponds and thus risking collisions with planes. In the case of drinking water reservoirs, the shade balls also discourage algae growth and as a side benefit prevents evaporation, to an extent. But the claim the balls save 300 million gallons a year actually represents less than a day's water use for the Los Angeles Water Department. But the biggest issue with the plastic balls is over time plastic degrades and fragments and breaks down into small particles that humans will end up consuming in the water they drink. The black additive in the balls is carbon black, which isn't supposed to be harmful when it leaches. Yet even with this precaution, most plastics leach endocrine, a disrupting chemical that interferes with animal and human hormone systems. Remember a couple of years ago when people stopped buying face wash with microbeads? There's a reason. That's because microplastics are really bad for the environment and the food chain. The primary purpose of the shade balls was to obey federal rules on covering drinking water. The Los Angeles Department of Water and Power had previously used the balls in smaller reservoirs, and in the case of the Los Angeles reservoir, the balls have helped the department save more than $250 million over installing a more permanent cover. To be sure, shade balls will prevent evaporation, but the 300 million gallons a year these plastic balls are supposed to save is really not a whole lot, especially compared to the amount of water used by industry and agriculture. Fracking alone uses over 2 million gallons of fresh water in California every day. And if the agriculture industry cuts its water use by only 5%, that would save 500 billion gallons of water in a matter of months. Although the shade balls have been a successful alternative to the extensive construction work required to install a cover, some reservoirs are having the balls removed in favour for more permanent floating covers. Anyway, that's the end of this video. Thanks for watching, please subscribe and like, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.
This episode's about balls. Hey Shady Ballers, Jules here for D-News. If you've ever been to Los Angeles, you might have seen a ton of little plastic balls floating on top of their water reservoirs. There are millions of them, so many that from far away they look more like a blacktop than a giant wet Chuck E. Cheese ball pit. But before diving in face first, consider that these balls actually serve a very important purpose. Reservoirs like the one in Los Angeles store the city's drinkable and potable water, but federal law says that they can't just leave this water exposed to the open air. When the EPA enacted this mandate in 2006, it was responding to an outbreak of cryptosporidiosis, a stomach illness contracted from drinking contaminated water, namely from reservoirs. Cryptosporidiosis is not the only side effect of exposed reservoirs. Uncovered water can be pooped in by birds, or just get dirty from dust and dirt settling on top. In the aftermath of 9/11, a lot of people were concerned that open reservoirs would be targeted by terrorists, like the enemy would fly by on a plane and drop in toxic chemicals, infecting entire populations. But Batman-based terror attacks aside, the biggest concern when it came to exposed drinking water, at least for LA County, was a chemical reaction that occurs when water interacts with sunlight. LA's reservoirs contain a small amount of chlorine as a disinfectant. In direct sunlight, when chlorine combines with a natural element found in groundwater called bromide, it creates a chemical called bromate. Bromate sucks to ingest and can cause stomach pain, nausea, and in high doses, serious damage to the kidneys and nervous system. Sunlight can also lead to algae growth, which isn't harmful in itself, but when algae breaks down and the organic components mix with chlorine, it creates byproducts which have been associated with birth defects and even certain cancers. So, LA County needed to cover up their reservoirs, and they considered a few ways of doing it. The most logical solutions were to build a huge roof or to use a massive tarp, but these alternatives were really expensive. like $300 million expensive. That's like 3/4 of the average cost to launch a damn space shuttle. So instead, LA County went with shade balls. The idea was pretty simple. 96 million 4-inch diameter plastic balls would float on the reservoir, preventing evaporation and protecting the water from harmful airborne pollutants and the sun. The balls were also coated with a black carbon colorant that repels ultraviolet light, which can cause plastics and other materials to degrade. This chemical coating is intended to protect them for up to 25 years. Thankfully, shade balls are also economical. Each ball costs just 36 cents, representing a total savings of roughly $250 million for LA County. This is all fairly new. In fact, LA is the first county to use shade balls for this purpose, and they're getting a lot of attention, especially as a way to mitigate the effects of this crisis-like drought. The Los Angeles Reservoir's shade balls are expected to prevent roughly 300 million gallons of water from evaporating every year. So we need reservoirs because everyone needs drinking water. But what if all the water in the world ran out? Can that happen? Find out in this video by Julia.
Some aquifers can take anywhere from 500 to 1,300 years to refill. So it's a pretty large problem. Even the UN said that the world could suffer a 40% shortage of water just 15 short years from now.
So what do you think? Are shade balls really the future of environmental protection? Let us know down below in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe to D News for more videos every single day.